Fat loss is one of the most studied topics in nutrition and fitness. Yet somehow, most people are still confused. One expert tells you to cut carbs. Another tells you to fast. Someone else says it's all about hormones. And then social media tells you there's some secret trick nobody knows about. So I decided to dig into the research. I went through more than 50 scientific studies on fat loss. And after all that reading, I found something interesting. Most of the advice people hear is either incomplete, oversimplified, or taken out of context. In this video, I'm going to show you the 6 things the research consistently agrees on. We'll look at 6 key areas. First, calorie deficit. Then, protein intake. The role of sleep and stress. The difference between strength training and cardio. The hormones that influence hunger. And finally, the one factor that determines whether any diet works at all. Let's start with the foundation. If there's one thing every successful fat loss strategy has in common, it's a calorie deficit. Your body must use more energy than it receives. That's how stored body fat gets used as fuel. For most people, a deficit of around 500 calories per day leads to roughly half a kilogram of weight loss per week. But this is where many people make a mistake. They assume that if a small deficit works, a massive deficit must work even better. The research doesn't support that idea. Very aggressive dieting increases muscle loss, reduces energy expenditure, and makes long-term adherence much harder. So yes, calorie deficit is necessary, but bigger isn't always better. The goal is a deficit you can sustain. Once calories are under control, protein becomes one of the most important variables. Research consistently shows that a protein intake between 1.6 and 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is an effective range for preserving muscle during fat loss. Why is that important? Because muscle tissue is metabolically active. When you lose muscle, your body burns fewer calories. Protein also has another major advantage. It keeps you fuller for longer. Many studies show that higher protein diets reduce hunger and make dieting easier. And unlike carbohydrates or fat, protein requires more energy to digest. This is known as the thermic effect of food. In other words, your body spends more calories processing protein than it does processing other macronutrients. If you're trying to lose fat, protein is one of the highest return investments you can make. This might be the most underestimated factor in the entire presentation. Most people focus on food and exercise, but ignore sleep. Research shows that sleeping less than 6 hours per night increases ghrelin, which is the hormone that makes you feel hungry. At the same time, leptin decreases. That's the hormone that helps you feel full. The result? You become hungrier without realizing why. One study found that poor sleep can increase food intake by nearly 400 calories the next day. Think about that. You can completely erase a calorie deficit simply because you slept badly. Stress creates a similar problem. Chronically elevated cortisol levels are associated with increased fat storage, especially around the abdominal area. If your nutrition is perfect, but your recovery is terrible, fat loss becomes significantly harder. This is one of the biggest debates in fitness. Should you do cardio or strength training? The answer is both. But if I had to choose only one, I would choose strength training. Cardio burns more calories during the workout itself. That's true. But strength training helps preserve muscle mass. And preserving muscle is critical during a calorie deficit. Muscle helps maintain metabolic rate and improves body composition. When researchers compare different approaches, the combination of strength training and cardio consistently produces the best overall results. So don't think of these methods as competitors. Think of them as tools that work together. One reason fat loss feels difficult is because your body doesn't necessarily want you to lose weight. Throughout human history, food scarcity was a threat to survival. As a result, the body evolved mechanisms to resist weight loss. Leptin is one example. As body fat decreases, leptin levels fall. Your brain interprets this as a potential energy shortage. You become hungrier, and your body tries to conserve energy. At the same time, ghrelin often increases. This creates stronger hunger signals. This is why many people feel like they're fighting their own body during a diet. Understanding these hormones doesn't change the laws of energy balance, but it helps explain why dieting becomes harder over time. After reading all these studies, one conclusion stood out more than any other. The best diet is the one you can stick to, not the most extreme, not the trendiest, not the one your favorite influencer recommends. The one you can consistently follow. Eating reasonably well 6 days per week will outperform a perfect diet that you quit after 2 weeks. Environment matters. Habits matter. Identity matters. People who view themselves as healthy, active individuals tend to maintain results far longer than people who constantly rely on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Systems remain. So what do 50 studies on fat loss actually tell us? A calorie deficit is required. Protein is critical. Sleep matters more than most people think. Strength training should be part of your plan. Your hormones influence hunger and behavior. And consistency is the factor that ties everything together. None of these ideas are revolutionary. There are no secrets here. But they are supported by decades of research. And if you apply them consistently, they work. Thank you for watching. And if you found this useful, consider subscribing for more evidence-based content on nutrition, fitness, and fat loss.